Slip through the gap in the sandstone wall and the field opens up. The space of sky that suddenly appears. The air different, cooler and fresher, the heat not trapped by the hard surfaces of the streets. Walk up the earth path, under the beech trees, along by the sandstone wall. The sight and scent of green, dense shifting space of nettles and ivy. The path through the trees, a cloister of birds. Seek the green chapel, weave and cross-cut of song overhead for the time it takes to walk the path. I'm Helen Tookey and I'm at Sudley Field, which is a small field near where I live in South Liverpool, with a kind of wooded path all the way around the edge. It's one of the landscapes that I write about in my new collection, In the Quaker Hotel. It's a book of places. It's a book of encounters with places, and thinking about the way that we are standing on a kind of threshold, I guess, between the past, the present, and what feels like a very uncertain future in terms of the environment. The book started from a really specific point, which was in 2019. I read a news report about the number of insect species that had died out since about 1970, which was roughly when I was born. So it hit me really hard, that kind of coincidence of the shortness of my own lifetime, the fleetingness of that time, with the rapidity, the enormous sense of loss, the scale of the loss in terms of the natural world. I started writing a poem almost immediately in response to that. It just kind of came out in that way that doesn't happen very often. And initially I didn't really understand what the poem was about. The way it returned to a childhood memory of mine, being on holiday on the Norfolk coast. But it kind of became clear to me that was the sort of topic of the book, really, or the way the book was going to kind of expand into exploring this kind of facing two ways idea, looking towards the future, and also looking back to the past, back to childhood. So I will read that poem. It's called Amber. When they told us the insects were dying, we finally understood it was over. We didn't know how to tell the children, went out for a walk by the long edge of the playing fields. The sky was yellow. Sundays had always tasted of sorrow, but this was different. We remembered the beach by the glass green water, how Sarah had found the huge chunk of amber, lugged it up to the hut on the prom to show Theo the lifeguard. The rest of us crowding, trying to prove we were part of the finding. And every day for the rest of the summer, we scoured the tide line for yellow pebbles, desperately wanting them to be amber. And when summer was over, we put the beach in our pockets and went back to school. So there are a lot of child figures in the book. Some of them are me, some of them are other children, people who are children now. And I guess in a way they all represent this kind of duality, this sort of facing both ways aspect. In a sense that they're me thinking back to my own childhood, but they're also looking forward. The children are the people who are going to deal with the future, whatever the future looks like. So this poem that I'll read, Leapfrog, is an encounter with one of those children. Well, if you're going, I'm going, the small girl with dark hair exclaims to her friend, on the lawn outside the cafe. I mean, you can't play leapfrog on your own. She's the one who's been making the rules, orchestrating and shaping the game. The other girls just playing along. Her friend shrugs, runs inside. She wants to know what the adults are doing, wants to sit at the table with them, practice becoming part of their world. Left alone, the smaller girl kicks a little at the grass, then follows slowly. I really like the game leapfrog, she states decisively to no one. Minutes later, she bursts back out through the French windows, begins turning cartwheels the length of the lawn. So there are a lot of different landscapes in this book. There are places near where I live, like Sudley Field, like New Brighton at the end of the Wirral Peninsula, like this place here, the Rose Garden at Sudley Field, and its veranda where I've sat many hours looking out over the river, the estuary, the hills. And there are places further afield. I was lucky enough to go to southern France, and there are sections in the book focused on that, and to Nova Scotia for 2 weeks to live in Elizabeth Bishop's childhood home, and there's a section of the book exploring that as well. But I wanted all the landscapes to kind of have a sense of combining the real, the accurate, with a slightly kind of off-kilter sort of feeling about them. I wanted the overall feeling to be one of a slightly kind of near future, I guess, so that you're never quite certain whether the people in the poems are living in the now or somewhere slightly kind of tilted into the future. So I'll finish by reading the last poem in the book, which is partly inspired by the experience of going to Nova Scotia and Elizabeth Bishop's house. But it also, I hope, has a slightly kind of a slight sense of what's coming, what might we be facing in this very uncertain future. So this poem is called Return. We take down the storm shutters. Pale sea light floods the rooms. Wooden floorboards. The room's quite bare. We walk through them. Try the switches. Generator somewhere back in the dunes. We make coffee. We walk through the rooms. Boards creak under our feet. Hollow drum sound of the crawl space. Hiss and scritch against the porch. Whisper of sand. Its constant fetch against the shingles. Spring and creak of the kitchen floor as we unpack the food, stock up the cupboards. Rattle of glasses on the dresser. Sudden burst of radio voices, kids' voices. Some station along the coast, maybe hundreds of miles, maybe not far. Signal fading in and out, wind rising. Green flare of the lamps as we light them. Snatch of radio harmony. Surf City, here we come. And under it all, the sea murmur. Unbroken thought of this place. Out beyond the mudflats, sea observes, weighs things up, begins to think of coming home.